Hi, I'm Michelle Connolly and welcome to ProfileTree TV. We are very excited today to have Simon Huntley from Momentum in and welcome him into the studio. So Simon, very welcome to have you here. Very excited to have you here. So maybe just you want to do a little introduction to yourself and your background and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Simon Huntley. I'm Business Development Director for Momentum. We are a research and development specialist company. So we help businesses get tax credit, really tax relief back against the work that they do as part of research and development within their business. From a background perspective, I've done quite a number of roles over the last 40 odd years. I've been a telephone engineer. I've worked in finance and payables solutions company. I've worked as an international director in a large global bank. And for the last nearly 3 years now, I've been working on the business development side with Momentum, and more recently become a director in the company as well. So that's what I do.
Exciting time. So what brought you to Momentum then and that business development role? Because maybe slightly different to being in the bank.
Very different. Working for a bank from 2008 to 2018 was a trial, shall we say. Probably not a great time to be in banking, and certainly from an introduction to banking in 2008, it certainly wasn't that good. Interestingly, I got to know Tom Werner, who owns Momentum, back in about 2010, and got to know him through a networking event, actually, believe it or not, and really him and I got on very well. I loved the idea of what the company were doing, the idea of getting money back from against corporation tax from HMRC for genuine research and development work. I thought was a really interesting twist. And I suppose working for a bank at the time, we probably weren't very good at helping companies. So if I was able to talk to a client and not help them as a bank, but offer them a means by which I could get them help through the likes of Momentum, I thought, well, why not? Why not refer clients that way? And so that's what I used to do. And I'm going to say I got lucky enough to be made redundant by the bank back in 2018, and I do mean that genuinely. Probably from a point of view that it enabled me to afford to come away from a large corporate entity and work for a smaller company where I could help grow the business. And the business development side is something I've had over 30 odd years experience in. So it's a perfect role for me because I'm helping people. I'm doing something I really enjoy, which I find extremely interesting. You wouldn't believe the type of clients that we see and the sort of levels of innovation that happen in our wee country of Northern Ireland here, never mind further afield. So yeah, it's great to be involved in a business that really helps these businesses get part of their costs of R&D back and genuinely allow them to progress further through the whole development of their products, solutions or services.
Yeah, and as you say, back to that innovation and that excitement, every day is different, every business is different. Just even getting an insight into like the current new up and coming innovations, how people are really thinking differently, thinking out of the box. I'm sure it's every day's an exciting learning curve for you.
You know, they say every day's a school day, Michelle, and every day is genuinely a school day. And I took one of the guys who works for me out to a meeting recently, and it was an engineering company. And I have to say that my background sort of is a bit of an engineering side, and I still would keep my hand in it, doing a lot of different work, whether it's on the car, around the house, DIY, whatever. But going around the engineering workshop and just seeing some of the ideas that these guys were coming up with, and the guy who was with me, who works for me, he said after the meeting, he said, I can't believe the passion you had for that. And I said, well, these guys are passionate about their business. It's really exciting. And just to be able to see how people think and the things they do and the ideas they come up with, it's great. And you know, we're seeing it now, and should we mention COVID, but the reality is businesses are having to be quite inventive at the minute. They're having to reinvent themselves in a changing world, do things differently than they've ever done before. And so even that side of seeing how businesses are coping at the minute, it's so interesting, it's great.
Yeah, and you're right. I think the current situation has really, changed mindset, maybe accelerated businesses as well, because maybe thought processes, we might do that in the future, but we'll get to it. It's had to maybe be sped up because of the current situation, and they've had to start thinking about it now rather than in 5 years or 2 years' time.
And I think on top of that, a lot of senior directors and management people in business actually had a period of time during lockdown to really hone their thoughts and actually take those ideas forward. And now that's exactly right. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing businesses who perhaps wanted to go in a certain direction, never really had time because of the day-to-day running of their business, and now have had that time to think about it and plan it and are progressing forward with that. And so, yeah, I think it is exciting times. You know, the developments out there are quite significant. I even laughed this morning. I was watching some guy who's invented some jetpack for ambulance staff to get up mountains and rescue. You know, I don't know. That's the sort of innovation we come across, you know.
Yeah, every day.
Every day, absolutely.
And so in terms of Momentum, what sort of services, I know you've mentioned it's, you know, tax credits and R&D and all of that, but what sort of services do you offer? Do you take people through the process? Do you offer advice? What sort of offering do you have?
A great question. And, you know, Michelle, our service that we offer is one of, I'd say, education to start with. There's still a lot of companies out there who, with the best one in the world, don't even understand what R&D for tax credit purposes is. And quite often they don't even think they're doing research and development. They think they're doing just normal day-to-day stuff. But quite often you go into an engineering company and every single day they're challenged with how to overcome problems within their business in order to create solutions for their clients quite often, not just for themselves. So those sort of companies don't know they're doing research and development, and they have never maybe heard of research and development tax credits. So I would see my role as business development more as an educational piece. It is working with a prospective client to get them to understand what R&D tax credits actually are. It's working with them to identify the areas within their business that we find that they're doing activities that meet the R&D tax credit guidelines. And it's then bringing in our technical people in order to really get in under the bonnet of the activities that those companies are involved in, so that we can, if you like, benchmark where they are as a business, understand what the outcome, if you like, of the projects they're trying to achieve are, and really tease out all of the activities that qualify for R&D tax credits. So once we've done that piece and we've, if you like, reported on that, we've substantiated where their R&D is, we also bring in our own in-house chartered accountants who will do the calculation around the level of benefit that's available to them. And that's really about understanding what the activities are that they're doing, what the costs are involved, whether it's people, whether it's materials, whether it's third-party subcontractors, whatever it might be. Try and really identify all of the activities that's attributable to the R&D tax credit, and providing them with an options of the benefit that they can get back through the HMRC initiative. And that's what we do. It's a complete end-to-end service from education right through to giving them the final amount of benefit that's available to them. We'll then work with them and their accountant in order to ensure that what is submitted to HMRC is accurate and is in their best interests. We're, I suppose, in a way, benefiting from not being a regulated industry, but we do have a level of compliance that we have to adhere to. So there's a thing now called the professional conduct in relation to tax that we must adhere to. So anybody who's working in any tax advisory capacity has to adhere to that. But we don't feel we're the right people to be advising our client on how best they take their benefit. We think that's a matter for their accountant and the client to deal with. And in fairness, our fees are derived from the benefit that's approved by HMRC. So it's probably, again, not in our or our client's best interest to be advising them how to take their benefit. If they take a higher or lower level of benefit, that's up to them. Our fees are always based on what's approved. So it's a fairer way to work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think you're right, because people, I think, see R&D as something tangible in that you have to have a product and improve it and do something with it for it to be researched. But back to what you're saying, it could be processes, it could be ways of working, it could be client communications, and it really could affect lots of different sectors and industries, because
Absolutely.
people again think it's the kind of engineering, manufacturing, construction-y sort of
They do,
sectors,
yeah.
but there are lots of other sectors out there that could benefit from what you guys are offering as well.
Michelle, I would say that if you talk about any single sector in the UK, we can probably come up with examples of companies that we worked in, with probably the one or two main exceptions, and that being probably retail. The hotel and leisure industry is probably also an area where it's hard to identify, albeit I would say we have a number of clients in the leisure sector where probably more about sort of event type driven leisure, where there are levels of innovation that we have identified as R&D. But you name it, from architects to biotech companies, from masons, I mean stonemasons, through to high-end manufacturing. We've got clients across every single one of those sectors, from some of the smallest 2 or 3 man bands right up to large corporate customers. So.
And it's interesting you say as well, from the smaller 2 to 3 staff, because again, I think, and I'm just talking about misconceptions here, and it's probably misconceptions I had too, that it has to be a big, you employ 1,000 staff and all of this sort of thing. I mean, there are quite a few misconceptions, I think, out there.
Some of the greatest levels of innovation are some of the startups at the minute. And, the best one in the world, a lot of those startups are consistently doing good research and development. Their levels of innovation in their ideas are phenomenal. Okay, it's probably fair to say their cost base is so low that there's very little in the way of R&D tax credit benefit for them. And they have to be a limited company in order to qualify anyway. But I'm always happy to talk to those companies on the basis that I can educate and advise them how best to consider their R&D going forward, so that when they do become a slightly larger limited entity where they have more of a cost base and therefore can benefit from what's available out there through R&D tax credits, then hopefully I'm in a good position to work with them and keep advising them and help them get that benefit back. So I would never look at a company and say, I don't really want to talk to you guys, really not interested. No, absolutely not. I'll talk to them because I think everybody has the potential to do research and development. So we'll always look at all those companies, no matter the size.
And as you say, it is that education piece. It's actually really sitting down and talking with people and saying, look, what do you do? How do you do it? And really looking at it and delving deep, I suppose, into their business to see, as you say, even if they're a small startup, they're doing an element of innovation, which again, sometimes comes a wee bit easier in a startup as well, because you don't have as many people to convince and not as much red tape, but actually knowing that having a goal and a vision, that when they do move forward or grow a bit bigger, that they know exactly the way that they're going to go about it in terms of being able to maybe use a service like yourselves, and actually the setup is correct for that at the beginning.
To be honest, half the battle is ensuring that they approach the whole R&D project or projects in a way that gives them the ability to benefit as they go forward. It's silly little things, but an example is, if a company pays for an employee to travel for the purposes of R&D, that cost cannot be claimed back. But if an employee pays and then claims that cost back through expenses, it can be claimed. So it's about trying to advise the client on the best way in which to manage their R&D, so that they're recording what the benchmarks are, they're recording what they're trying to achieve, they're recording every single element of the costs that are relevant to it. And when it comes to then completing a claim, not only is it much easier to substantiate, but the information's there for them. It's not a retrospective viewpoint. So the approach is key. And I think it's one of the bits where we feel we really excel, is that we do offer that advisory side of it, that how to manage your project going forward. It's not just about working out what a claim is worth and taking the money. It's about making sure they approach the projects in the way that are going to be best for them.
Yeah, which is, it's just so important. And in terms of, you've got lots of businesses out there that are thinking, am I not? What are the sort of key indicators, key signs that you think actually you're a good candidate for this sort of tax credit claim, what would businesses be kind of thinking in their mind? What would you be saying? Look, these are the key things you need to be thinking about, before making a claim and knowing whether you're eligible or not.
I'll tell you what HMRC say, Michelle. HMRC say that where a project seeks to achieve an overall advancement in knowledge or capability in the fields of science or technology, then it is likely that that project meets the R&D Tax Credit guidelines. Now that's a whole mouthful. What we're really trying to do is identify where companies are trying to improve, whether it's a product, a service, or even a process, where there's some sort of a technological or a scientific angle to that improvement, that capability within their sphere of expertise. That's the key. Now that still sounds a bit jargony. Really, businesses who are trying to do something that is slightly better than what's the benchmark at the minute, and trying to improve upon something that's already in existence, or perhaps isn't necessarily in existence, but they have an idea, and that it's not easily discernible how to go about achieving that goal. That's what we're looking at. And I look at companies on a daily basis, and most companies will be challenged within their sphere of expertise in order to continue to improve or better themselves, whether it's at individuals or businesses. So there's often levels of innovation within what a company does almost on a day-to-day basis, where they're challenged, where there isn't an easy place to go and find out how do you do that. And it's probably fair to say that if your competitor's doing something and you're thinking, I'm sure I could do that, but I don't know how to go about it. If you can Google it, or if you can go to your competitor or go to a consultant and say, how are they doing that? And they can tell you, well, then the chances are that's not R&D. But if you try and find out how somebody else is doing something and you can't easily find out how to do it, but you've an idea about how you could maybe make it better or improve it, you're probably going to embark on R&D. And that's what I'm looking for. That's the key.
Yeah, and it's that thought process, as you say, of knowing just, I want to improve, but it's not already a solution that's, you can take it off the shelf and just go use it. It's actually going to take a level of research, or, looking at different ways of doing it, thinking out of the box and trying to improve upon it. So no, that's really, really interesting, because I think that's probably a key thing where people don't think they're actually doing something, because it's not a big, massive AI, VR, AR project.
Absolutely.
It's maybe something small, but actually very impactful for their business or their sector or their clients.
Very much. And one of the other misconceptions in this is that companies, people, individuals think the project has to succeed in order to qualify for R&D. It doesn't. A failure really shows that it's very hard to try and achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. So even though a project might not succeed, or a project might not succeed at a specific period of time, yet you go back and you revisit it and you try again, you're continuing to do R&D. So failures do not detract from the fact that there is money available on the table to claim back against your corporation tax.
Yeah, and you're right, as you say, it's usually the failures that we build upon and go, right, we'll not do that again.
Nope.
But we know where we went wrong, so let's try something else and
Absolutely.
try and go on a completely different route. And in terms of just, you're talking about claims and R&D tax credits, is there a reasonable amount of money that a business can claim back? Is it worth their while?
It's absolutely worth their while. If a company spends £50,000 on research and development, as a profitable SME business, they can get 12,500 of that back in tax credit or tax relief. That's worth it. It's 25% of the cost of their spend, and that's for a profitable SME. An SME who's perhaps losing some money, so who's heavily into development and putting a lot of their costs in, can actually claim up to 33.33% of their R&D costs back as a payable tax credit. That's a significant chunk of their costs. As if their development rule says, well, we're progressing, we're moving forward, we can see where the benefit is. To get a third of your costs back in the financial year after you've completed those costs, well, it's very well. So yeah, look, most of the SMEs we talk to, they're getting between £5,000 and maybe £50,000 of benefit back for a financial period. If I give you £5,000 now, I think you'd take it. If I said to you, give me 1,250 quid and I'll give you £5,000, I think you'd pay that.
Yeah, there's not many questions I have around that. But you're right, and I think as well, would you say that when people do talk to you or people know about the benefit, do you think that increases their, I suppose, thought process around doing something innovative? Does it take a wee bit of the risk away, do you think?
I don't think R&D tax credits necessarily will generate people's inner thoughts, their ideas, their innovation. But I think it's a very encouraging benefit to have in order to give somebody the I suppose that drive to embark upon a process and a project. There's no question about it. If I think something's going to cost me 10 grand and I find out at the end of it I'm actually going to get a quarter of that back, so it's only going to cost me 7,500, I think I might have more of a drive to go forward and try it. Particularly if I've got that mindset that says, well, if I spend this, I think I can develop this. That incentive of having something back at the end of it again that you can continue to reinvest is the whole purpose as to why this was brought in 2000. At the end of the day, it's in the government's best interest, particularly now, to have the UK and indeed Ireland's government, to have Ireland at the forefront of development. From a UK perspective, particularly as we enter into Brexit, to have UK businesses at the forefront of development and innovation is going to be massive. It's going to be a heck of an impact to the economy. And I think any incentive like this that helps businesses to take that step and drive forward, it's got to be a benefit.
Yeah, and as you say, it may be that they're already thinking of it, have it on the radar, and this is just maybe the final tipping point that says, okay, makes it slightly more affordable, that we're going to get some of the money back. It's maybe worth taking the risk, and actually having that educated piece and information around it can help maybe drive people in that decision-making process, I suppose.
It's certainly, I think, the real driver behind HMRC and the government putting this incentive in place. No question about it.
And in terms of Northern Ireland, in terms of innovation, I suppose really what I'm saying is, are you seeing a lot of innovation happening here? Or is it died down because of the pandemic, or what sort of situation are we in Northern Ireland in terms of innovation?
Do you know, that's a really interesting question. And when you think about it, a significant proportion of the whole aircraft's industry seating, so the technology and the innovation behind aircraft seating, that happens in Northern Ireland. Something like 60% of the crushing and screening products, solutions are produced and exported from Northern Ireland. So we have a significant amount of innovation and manufacturing and engineering experience here. Has COVID affected it? Yes, I think it has. I think we've seen a significant proportion of our manufacturing and engineering businesses who've had to go into furlough in the 6-month period, really from March through to now. That will impact. It will impact on the amount of effort and work. But I suppose, as I mentioned earlier, to the same token, the levels of innovation to bring us back out of COVID again have been apparent, and it's an area we're looking at. Is there something in that businesses actually can use and look at from an R&D tax credit perspective? The reality, we have massive innovation here. We've got great places like Catalyst. We've got some very, very innovative companies and ideas and businesses over here that haven't changed, haven't stopped. I think we've just got to look at some of the quality of the university sectors, Queen's and Ulster University. Yeah, some great innovation coming out of them. That's probably a bit aside from R&D tax credits, but the thoughts and the ideas that come out of that skill set are phenomenal. And we know ourselves that the investment from the US and further afield in software development and those sort of industry sectors in Northern Ireland is second to none. So there's a lot of innovation out there in the whole tech space.
Yeah, amazing. And in terms of the last question I'm going to ask about innovation, how important is it that a business is innovating?
If you're not innovating, you're going backwards. That's the long and short of it. You know, if you're standing still, I'm sorry, your competitor's innovating and they're moving forward, so you're going backwards. It's key.
Yeah. And what about if you were, say, for example, a business that had been involved in innovation, didn't know about R&D tax credits and has been doing something for about 2 years? Can you kind of, I suppose, submit a claim mid-project, or would you have to start a new project again?
No. You hit a nail on the head. Any business that's been doing R&D in the past has never claimed can actually go back 2 financial periods. So if your year end is March and you haven't made a claim for your March 2020 and your March 2019 year, now's the time to go about that, because we can go back those 2 financial periods from the current period you're in. So it's not lost money. Okay, if you've been doing it for 3 years, you've lost a bit, but you know what? Get what you can now. So yeah, look, it's the one thing that HMRC are very generous about. You can retrospectively go back 2 financial periods. The one thing about R&D tax credits is it is always a retrospective claim. So the financial period has to have ended. The payments for anything R&D related have to have been made. And we're looking back at that period in order to assess the true value of the benefit that's available.
Yeah. No, because I was just thinking about, say, people might be watching this and thinking, goodness, I've been doing something for like a year and a half, or I'm 6 months into a project. Am I too far gone? But it's interesting to see that you can actually work back a little bit as well. And it's not that, okay, the project started now, so you'll have to wait until your next project or that project closes before you can start claiming. So that's really, really an interesting viewpoint. And I'm thinking there will be people kicking themselves going, I've been doing innovation all along and I didn't realise.
A lot of companies will have been involved in level of innovation and research and development for a number of years. And they may think that they've actually done their research development's done. Well, I'll bet you any money, like we said earlier, if you're not innovating, you're moving backwards. I bet you a lot of those companies are continuing to improve and develop on the solutions they developed years ago. That's still R&D. So it's important to note that it's not necessarily about the overall scope of a project. It's about the individual elements within a project, that there are R&D activities. So within any given period, there can be an element of what a company does that is R&D. And that's what we're there to identify and draw out.
So what's the future for Momentum?
Wow.
Just a small question.
To grow. No, it's great. It's a really great question, because as a business, we are being much more proactive now in the Republic of Ireland. The SME market in the Republic of Ireland has in reality been neglected from an R&D tax credit perspective. And the revenue commissioners in the Republic have a similar initiative to HMRC here. It's maybe not quite as generous in terms of you can only go back 1 financial period rather than 2. But the difficulty is the revenue in the Republic are probably a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? They're more cautious in paying out on the claims, or should I say they'll review the claims process more thoroughly. So it's important for any company helping SMEs down there to get really in under that and really understand the R&D, I suppose that's what I'm saying, and substantiate it. SMEs traditionally down there haven't been doing that, and that's where we think we can really add value down there. We're also starting to move into capital allowance tax credits as well. There's a tax credit that is perhaps not widely known about when it comes to commercial property, whether it's purchasing of commercial property or whether it's refurbishing commercial property. And there is in any building, there are embedded fixtures and features that can attract an enhanced level of corporation tax allowance. Often when a company either refurbishes or develops a property, they don't necessarily look at those embedded features. They just will take the capital allowance as it's allowed over a 50-year period. But actually using the embedded fixtures and features capital allowances, we can accelerate a lot of the the corporation tax benefit back over an 8-year period rather than 50 years. So it's an area that we're starting to do a lot more. We're working now with a quantity surveyor who has a lot of experience in this field, and so we're certainly looking to help our clients, existing clients and new clients who have invested in their commercial properties to actually get some of the additional benefits that are available to them as well in that field. So it kind of goes hand in glove really with the R&D tax credits for us. So that's what we're trying to do as a business. It's continue to look forward, continue to help our clients as they exist, and hopefully attract some new ones.
Yeah, and as you say, just even that element of you guys are growing, but also seeing other businesses grow and develop because of a bit of advice and help and support from you guys. And I know there's loads of different elements within business growth, but I'm sure it's very rewarding seeing businesses being able to grow a little bit more from just actually an initial conversation with you guys to begin with and then working through the process.
Absolutely, Michelle. You know, there's no better indictment than when a client comes to you and says, "Can't believe we got that money back, and we've paid you, by the way."
It's always an important part.
Absolutely.
So Simon, if somebody thinks that they, could avail of your services, or even just wants to ask a question around eligibility, or is it innovative with what they're doing, or is it research and development, what's the best way to contact you?
Listen, I can give you all my contact details, but I will leave my mobile number and my email address and my office number, because a quick phone call, a quick email to me, it's pretty easy to identify if we think there's something worth us meeting up and having a further discussion about. So yeah.
So it's just as simple as a phone call.
Simple as a phone call. Yeah, and I would say 10 minutes we'll know whether it's worth us really pursuing something for you.
Which is it's such an easy process, as you say. Sometimes for all these grants and things and funding out there, you have to fill in masses of application forms and do all this webinars and classes and masterclasses, only to find out that actually you're not eligible after 10 hours maybe of work that you've put in. So the fact that you're saying 10 minutes and a quick phone call. And
I'll caveat that. It's 10 minutes of us trying to just identify whether there's activities. Would I say it's an easy process? No, it's not. And so from a point of view of a client themselves trying to manage a claim, there's a heck of a lot of understanding of the guidelines, the BIS guidelines around this. That's really where we fit in. It's our job is to really identify that and do the work for you. And that's really what we do. I think we say we have a 90-10 principle. We do 90% of the work. Our clients have to give us 10%. But the benefits are the clients at the end of it.
And I think that's music to people's ears, because we know all these applications and forms are never easy, never mind when tax is involved. So definitely if you need help, give you a call and it'll all be sorted, and then the money will just go into your bank, and that'll be it. An easy, simple process. It'll take a bit of time.
It does.
It takes a bit of questions, a bit of form filling, but the fact that you guys handle it all.
Hopefully no form filling from our perspective, because it's not about getting a grant, it's about claiming back against tax.
But as you say, you guys handle it all, so you don't have to worry about all of those minute details that tip people over the edge sometimes.
Correct. We take the pain out of it.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. It's been really, really interesting, and to hear, I suppose, and actually stop some of those misconceptions around what people are saying in terms of, no, my business isn't innovating, my business isn't doing research and development, and actually they really are. So it'd be great to see people watching this, actually that wee light bulb turning on and going,
it's the light bulb moment that we
exactly,
like.
Exactly. So, no, thank you so much for coming in.
Michelle.
So, hopefully you find some really great information from that today. And as I say, if you do have any questions around R&D tax credits, do give Simon or his team a call. That's all from us today at ProfileTree TV, and we will see you all again soon.